Hi, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consultant. Let's build Mike's mobile library. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I have two things on the agenda. First, I'm going to add 3 more screens to the development version of our Mike's mobile library application, copying them from production into development. However, on these 3 screens, there is nothing new or different from what we've already worked through on previous screens. So I'll basically just show you what's in them, the content, how they work, and probably maybe look at a little bit of code, but not much. But I want to devote the main part of today's session to something that came up during the process of working on this set of screens, and that is tracking changes. As Access developers, we're constantly reminded of the importance of making backups, keeping good version control over our relational database applications as we build them and so on, and the ability to audit changes. A lot of developers actually put a lot of effort into creating an audit trail and a way to track which changes are made to which records and which user made those changes. And I was thinking it would be kind of nice to be able to do that here. And then it dawned on me, SharePoint has that facility built in. So once we go through these screens really quickly, then I will take you into the world of SharePoint, and we'll look at how SharePoint automatically provides very limited but very useful versioning, both of our PowerApps applications themselves, but also the records within our SharePoint lists. Let's begin. I've entered my development environment here. I've started the application. As always, I'm going to play the application. And we're going to look at participants, check-ins, and role statuses. A little bit of background about why these 3 have to work together. One of the things that I wanted to track in this application was where books came from, where DVDs came from, who I got them from, and if they leave my library, where did they go, who acquired them. That's probably less important than the incoming side. But I also wanted to be able to track if I borrowed a book from somebody or if I loaned a book to somebody, then I needed to be able to track that so that I could go back and say, hey, are you done reading that book that I loaned you? Or, by the way, here's the book I loaned you. I remembered it by looking at my database that I still have your book. So we have 3 parts to that. We have the status or the role, which is a buyer of a book or a seller of a book or the owner of a book, those kinds of things. We have the participants, the buyers and the sellers, the lenders and the borrowers. That's by name and their role, and then the in and out process. I called it check-ins and check-outs. I'm still not 100% comfortable with any of this terminology. Role status is the only one that I think is really satisfactory. This check-in, check-out is more like a lending library and less like the acquisition. But anyway, if you have any suggestions, by the way, for better terminology, I'd appreciate it if you drop those into the comments. At the same time, you subscribe and hit the like button. Let's start with check-ins, check-outs. I have already started filling this out, so I'd have something to show you. This particular screen has galleries and a form, just like we've seen in other locations. So I'm not going to go into the inner workings of those. The first gallery simply lists all of the publications I currently have listed. And you can filter by the title. A participant, and again, this is one of those terms that I need a better, more precise name for. Some of the participants are vendors like Amazon or the USU bookstore when I was in college, Barnes & Noble, Brock's Publishing, Some of the participants are people from whom I have borrowed a book, or to whom I have loaned a book. Library owner, and this is my friend Mike, whose real name is not Mike Baker, by the way. I'm just calling him Mike's Mobile Library because I like the alliteration. But Mike Baker is my library owner, and I'm involved as the manager of the library. This gallery, the third gallery, has the roles, and the role is defined as a transfer to an owner, a transfer to seller, and so on. So we have owners, sellers, donors, borrowers, buyers, lenders, a return. I don't really remember what I was thinking when I put returns in. Maybe it'll come back to me, but right now I'm just looking at that thinking, I don't recall exactly why I wanted a return, but there we are. And a custodian, that's somebody who may have temporary control. For example, if I put books into storage in a rental place, then they're in the custody of that custodian. So 3 galleries for the 3 elements of a transfer: publication, the participant, the role of that participant, the date, the estimated value at the time of the transfer, and the button which actually does that. The code that runs when I click the icon with the plus sign to add that is another patch command, and it takes the 2 lookup fields from the publication and participant and adds them, and we're still using the patch command because of that lookup field that we've talked about several times in the past. The final element on this screen is the lower right here, where we have a history of the check-ins and check-outs for any given publication. So we have here, for example, the book called Raylan. The library owner is Mike Baker, and that record is now looking at the publication transfer table. This gallery is based on the publication transfer table, and this record is the record that indicates Amazon Books sold the volume called Raylan. The library owner then becomes the owner in a separate transaction. Let's scroll down and find a different one and see if it's recorded. Okay, Haunted Mesa. That book is a Tony Hillerman novel, and I bought that from Amazon. So the seller is Amazon, and I have no idea. I've had it for many years. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick a date, say 2010, call it January 1st because I don't have anything more accurate. Probably good guess is $18. No, it was less than that. It was a paperback. Let's call it $8, although prices have gone up. When I hit the icon, it adds that record using the patch command, and this gallery updates to show it. I also need to show that the library owner is, again, Mike Baker, who is the theoretical library owner, even though this is my personal library. Hit the transfer button again. We don't need to repeat the date or the value because those are the same. And now we have 2 records in the publication transfer table, which is the providing items for this gallery, showing where it was bought and who the current owner is. Let's see, I believe I had one that I was going to use for an example. Let's scroll quickly. Okay, here's the one that I wanted. Okay, I originally set this up as myself as the owner, but as I just got through saying, because this is hypothetically Mike's library, not mine, I want to change this. Right now, I do not have a way built into the application to swap records. I can't update. All I can do is delete that particular transfer. And there's my pop-up, which we have seen in the last couple of videos. delete that transfer, and now I'm going to make the library owner Mike Baker, and we'll use the same date of 6/1/2010, excuse me, 2021. And this value that I recorded at that point was $15. I told you paperback prices have gone up substantially. Add that record, and now I have it in terms of this sample library, the demo library. Mike Baker, who is the owner of Mike's Mobile Library, is properly recorded as the owner. Remember that in order to make that change, I had to delete and add a new record. And that's where the idea came from, that I want to track that kind of change. Is there a way for me to keep track of changes made? I'll show you that and some others in the next section. Let's go back and look at the role status screen. This one again has a gallery on the left which lists all of the current roles that I have identified for participants in this library. The owner, owned publications are purchased or donated to Mike's library. The sellers, the donors, and so on. If I want to edit one, pops into my little form here on the right, which is a basic PowerApps form. I added the sort order field because I want these to sort in a particular order, not alphabetically and not in the order in which they were entered, which would be basically the value of the primary key would determine it. I wanted to control the sort order, so I put a sort order field, so you can see that owner is 10, seller is 20. That means that if I sort on that field, then owner always sorts in first position. The extended description, if I hit this button, I'm going to actually, no, I don't want to do that. I want to change this one. It's the first one. I'm going to change this to 15 and submit the form. And then we'll look at the record of that change in our next section. Now, seller is still 20, but owner is now 15. And we have a record of that change in our audit location, our versions table. And I'll show you how that how SharePoint handles that in a second. The final element is the participants, and this is also very basic. Gallery on the left, form on the right. Amazon Books, we'll edit it. I don't have a individual associated with Amazon Books, so those fields are blank. In a properly normalized relational database application, this design would not fly. This would not be appropriate. We have a mixture of entities, which are organizations, and individuals with names, but because of the small number of entities involved and the intimate nature of this application, I decided I could get away with violating some of the rules of normalization, which I did. Mike Baker, we can edit him. He is the library owner, and I have my name listed as Grover Park Consulting as the designer developer of this particular database. Now I have the delete, and I believe I will go ahead and try that. Yes, I have my pop-up that says I can't delete that record because it's already been used to assign transfers. So all you can do is click OK and go back. If we add a new record, and we'll call it test name. Well, we don't need to have a also known as, and save that. That will now show up here. I can select it, click the delete icon, And now I get the opportunity to delete it because there's no related records tied to that value. Yes, delete, removes it, and we're back to normal. Okay. We're ready to go back and look at a couple of things I wanted to show you. I pick role status. This is a form, and I wanted to mention this because I'm not sure I've actually talked about how this works in previous videos, because we've mostly used the patch command to add and edit records. This is roughly the equivalent in the PowerApps world with the standard bound form in the Access world, where simply submitting the form or saving the form takes all of the values and all the controls on that form and pushes them back into the bound record source, or the items for that form, in this case the SharePoint list. You can submit the form and that will happen automatically. If it's in edit mode, it changes an existing record. If it's disabled, it is simply a display only or a view. It simply shows you the values that are there. Oh yes, this is, yeah. Now, on the on select, we change that form into edit status. And if we use the plus icon, we set that form into new status. So if we change the form to new, it will add a new record. If we change it to edit, it will edit the record. Everything else is very similar to the idea behind bound form in Access. Okay, so we have looked at how these forms basically work. The other forms have similar features and functions, and if we haven't talked about it here, it's available in previous videos where we've talked about the mechanism, the codes that we use to do this. What I really wanted to show you now is the way PowerApps actually tracks versions. I'm going to go ahead and publish this version. All changes are currently saved. I have changed nothing in the design since I last saved it. I can publish it, and this makes it the currently active version, which I will start on my cell phone, for example. If I launch it on the phone, the version that I just saved will be the one that I see. However, PowerApps keeps track of all previous versions that have been created. And it's taking a while because there are quite a few of them here, 49 to be exact. And they go back for quite a while. This is good and bad because I can go back at any point in time and say the last time I remember this being good, was on the 29th. So I can restore that version and make it the current live version. Or I can delete old versions. The good thing here is I do have a history of all prior versions going back to the last time I deleted. The bad thing is this takes up space, and the question is, do I really need all these versions? Yes, no. Maybe some of them are useful, some of them are just obsolete. I don't care. The problem with that is deleting them is a onesie operation. I can only delete one version at a time. There's no way to bulk delete previous versions. If I do delete one, and I'll go back here, I'll pick an older one so I don't work something that I want to keep. Delete it. Once it's deleted, it can't be recovered. And then it renumbers all the prior versions so that they stay. So that's version control in its most simplistic form in PowerApps. Okay, let's go look now at the versioning on individual lists and individual items in lists. Let's start with the site contents. Each of the lists has its own version control. I'm going to select one. I believe this is the one here that I want to look at. This is the creator table. I have sorted it from newest to oldest. This is the most recent edition. If I select that record by right mouse clicking any open space on that record, and you can't see my mouse here, but I am using the right mouse button to click, and there are several things you can do here, including edit it or copy it, a link to it, manage access. This is permissions on it, but the one we're interested in here, well, actually there are two. We want version history and alert me. Let's start with version history. If I click on version history, it shows me the last time a change was made to that particular record. Now in this case, it is the first time that record appeared in the list, so it's only one version, and that is the new one when it was created. If I select one of the older ones, and I'm pretty sure, let's see, this one will probably show it. I right mouse click, version history, and now I have two records. The first one shows that it was originally Gene M. Owl, and it was later in version 2 changed to Walt Gasson. What happened was, when I was originally setting up my test version, the development version of the SharePoint lists, I managed to get out of sync, and as I was putting names in, I mistyped several, and I had to start over and correct several. There's several that are like this. If I select this one, I can either view it, and this shows me the specific history, created time, last modified time. There are other options that I can do here. The thing that I wanted to show you really is that you do have a version history for most records, actually for all records. If there have been changes made to them, you'll also see a history of all those changes. The other thing we can do is add an alert, which I have previously done. So let's mouse click here, select alert me, and we're going to alert me when changes are made. Now these are the rules that I previously set up for the creator table. Alerts go to me at my email address, and this is the email address for this particular SharePoint Office 365 account. You send them by email. Any change to the table, any kind of change at all, sends an alert. You have three other options. You can send an alert only when someone changes an item, and so on. When someone else changes an item that you created, or someone else changes an item after you've created it. So you get these alerts when anything changes. That's going to include additions and deletions. You have the option of how frequently to get them. Now, in a heavily used application, you would probably want a daily or a weekly summary. In an individual application like this, which is me, myself, and I using it, an immediate notification doesn't overload me or my system. So that alert is already in place, and I can put that alert on any of the other tables or SharePoint lists as well. So this provides two ways of getting auditing. One, of course, is the versions that we see here. The other is these alerts. And now that ding you just heard was that email alert coming in to my SharePoint account. And it's telling me that I successfully created an alert. An alert already existed, but apparently it thinks that I have created a new one. and I can react to that alert in whatever way I think appropriate. Here are some older ones in which I added an item. As you can see, the subject line added an item. We can go and look at that item. We go to the table creator. We find that item, and there's the item that I added most recently, which is the most recent author that I added to my list. And okay, this one is one that I deleted, so we can go and look at that. I won't go through any of these others, but we should look at least an addition and a deletion. And we're seeing the list with an item deleted. It doesn't show me which item was deleted, but it does tell me that there was a deletion. Oh, I see. I forgot to say that I trust it, so I need to go to the item. And I am still not seeing the specific item that was deleted. However, there is a way to see items that it was deleted. We can go to the recycle bin. Now, the problem with the recycle bin, the good thing about the recycle bin is items are not permanently deleted like they are from an access table. This is more like Outlook, where you have a recycle bin where items are temporarily stored until they're permanently deleted. You can permanently delete or restore that item. The problem is that it's not very specific as to which item it is that you're looking at, so you kind of have to do a little bit of detective work to figure out which of these items is the one that I actually want to restore. And I'm not going to bore you by going through all of that, but you can kind of go back and forth and compare the deleted dates with dates on the version history and kind of triangulate and figure out which of these items is probably the one you want. It does tell you where it came from, the participant, or the publications transfer, and so on. So this is probably the one that I just got that alert on. But again, without doing a little bit more triangulation, I'm not going to waste your time doing that either. The point here is twofold. One, you do have audit capability, very limited, very simplistic, and versioning. The downside of that, of course, is there's an awful lot of manual effort required to get the information out. I believe that's enough as far as what we're looking at here. The recycle bin items are there. You can kind of triangulate and figure out which one is probably the one you want to restore. You can restore it, redelete it, restore it, redelete it, back and forth until you figure out which one it was. You can use the alert system to get regular updates as to when things have changed. And you can set version history, or you can actually look at version history, I should say, on individual items to see what values they have had in the past. So there is some rudimentary auditing and version control in your PowerApps app. I believe that should be sufficient to get you down that path. If you get to the point where you build a sophisticated enough application where this is an important feature, then you can come back and dive more deeply into those three things: the version history, alerts, and the recycle bin, and manually figure out what has happened with all of the data in your SharePoint lists. Once again, I hope you found something useful in today's presentation. If you have, I would very much appreciate if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you can receive alerts to future installments. In the future, we're going to wrap up with the three other basically lookup type tables that we haven't looked at, the screens for those three lookup tables. And the final, the big one, which I'm anticipating, is using the camera in your phone to take pictures and add them as photos to the records in your library.